Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. A bit gray here in the city of Philadelphia. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Leaf Productions. And we've got a good show for you today. Returning to normal, should we? COVID's SNAP benefits are ending health and well-being of individuals and political figures. And the Philly mayoral race we'll talk a little bit about. Um, the topic of the day, should we return to normal? Or is there a normal? Like I'm obviously talking about COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID world. We're not even actually post-COVID. There's still a lot of cases of COVID happening, although the more virulent strains of COVID have seemed to die off, and so it is a lot less dangerous at this point to catch COVID, and there's a lot less strain on our health system. There's still after effects of COVID. We have a population that hasn't been exposed to each other and the normal daily colds and viruses that we all carry around all the time. We have a population that got used to a different methodology of how we operate, and how things should be, I guess, how we treat each other, how we respect each other, and is it right? Should we be returning to some sort of pre-COVID world? Um, so we'll talk a little bit about how that impacts us and what that means. What does returning to a pre-COVID world mean? Um, Let me welcome first on screen our guests. We're hearing from Heather and Maddie. Welcome to the coffee break chat. Let's do some introductions. Heather, if you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do, and then follow up with Maddie, if you would introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
All right. Hi, I'm Heather. My pronouns are she. Um, I'm a director right now for our show First Date, but in real life, I am a finance manager for Bimbo Bakeries USA. And I've
Awesome.
been with them for about 6 years now.
Great.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I am assistant producing for State, and I'm a full-time nanny. Pronouns are she, her.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about First Date.
So First Date is about, as its name says, a first date between Casey and Aaron. It's a blind date. And it's kind of about the journey that they go on throughout the whole date. They kind of imagine things in their head, and the patrons at the restaurant kind of play out these different roles, like best friend, exes that they have, grandmas. It's just a funny show.
Awesome. And what prompted you guys to produce this script now here? What's the what how do you feel it interplays with the here and now, like, current audiences? What are you feeling really good about with the with what you've discovered so far?
So this is my first time directing, and I just fell in love with the show. It's been, I think it came out in like 2012, starring Zachary Levi and Gina Rodriguez. And it's just so funny and witty and has like a rock feel to it, which is, you don't see that in many musicals. I guess nowadays they're starting to be a little bit more rockish, but I just fell in love with the music and the different characters that they have.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about the characters. I mean, I know you gave kind of a synopsis there, but like, who are these people going on their first date?
I guess I can answer that one. So Aaron and Casey are the two main characters that are on the blind date, and they're kind of foils of one another. So one's more of like an uptight lawyer type, and the other one's a little more laid back. It's kind of like a classic dynamic going on. And I guess throughout their differences kind of bond them, and you kind of see that happen inwards and outwards as well, which is why it's kind of portrayed on stage by all the side characters that are in the bar.
Awesome. Where can people see your show?
Yeah, so we're actually performing at Variety Club. Um, our show dates are March 12th, 10th through 12th, and March 17th through 19th. If you come during the St. Patrick's week, we're putting in some St. Patrick's flair into the show. So that'll be a good time.
Tell us a little bit about the venue, Variety Club. It sounds interesting.
So Variety Club is actually a camp for disabled kids. So we partner with them. Our organization MCT partners with them to do one show a year there. And we have our storage facility there. It's a great organization. We do benefits like we do Fall Fest with them. So we kind of dress up in costumes and help them gain money. We also do their holiday lane where we do some caroling and hand out candy and everything during that. So both events are very beneficial for them.
Awesome. And so MCT is a community theater. Tell me a little bit about what it's like, how you guys are organized, what you look forward to working day to day, in the community theater.
Yeah, so MCT is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So everyone is a volunteer that works there. I'm actually on the board. We have 8 members that are on the board. We typically do 3 main stage shows, which are actually at Shenandoah in Audubon. And then we do either a play or musical. This time it was a musical for First Date in March. And then we do a children's show, which is for 18 and under kids. And that's usually a good time. Like the kids enjoy it.
Awesome. Wh- I mean, nonprofit doesn't necessarily mean volunteer. Like I work with and for a lot of nonprofits. So, just what has it been like getting non volunteer, like community theater, um, you know, uh, people to participate in that model since COVID. I mean, like, I'm assuming like at some point you guys may have like limited your productions, your in-person productions over the last few years. What's it like, doing in-person productions again now?
It feels so good to be back in person. We did during COVID, we did 2 shows and they were all videotaped and then presented out to the community. And we kind of had to, our one of them was kind of like a spoof on like our time there. So it's all like Zoom calls. And so everyone was like in their own little at their own house and everything. And so everything was done on Zoom for that one. So that was an interesting one. And then we started to kind of actually be more in person. But our next one, we had like plexiglass in between everyone. So we had to stay the 6 feet away. And again, we recorded this one and sent out a link to our membership to get people to watch it. And then finally, we were able to get back into Shenandoah, but we had to split up to protect the residents there. We had to do days where it was only like the public allowed and then only the Shenandoah residents allowed. And so finally last year in July, we actually got to have a full mix audience of the Shenandoah residents and the public come together and have full shows. Six, we typically do 6 shows. The other ones were limited to 4. So we were finally able to get back to our 6 shows and see everyone. So it was an awesome experience.
And just to piggyback off of that, I'm relatively new to MCT, and my first show with them was, I think, the first show where they were allowed to have a full audience with the full shows. And everyone was very COVID cautious. We were able to prevent any spreading, and we had a wonderful time. So definitely MCT has a very big core base of returning actors and production team. And everybody does a great job at being as safe as we can and having as much fun as we can.
So that was one question I was going to ask is, you know, in the greater producing world, a lot of, as we come back from, you know, come back to in-person productions, a lot of the producers and technicians and whatever that I work with and talk with, are finding, a change in personnel. Like there's people who've dropped out of the industry. There's people who have uh, different health concerns now than they did before COVID, etc. Has any of that impacted you guys, you find, or do you find that it's just kind of just been a picking up of where you left off?
I think it's kind of been a little bit of picking up where we left off. As Heather said, there was kind of like a slow transition of the ways that we were able to show our shows leading up to a full production. And I think that some people that maybe have health concerns have found ways to help in different ways. Some people, like we have people that do anything from lights to costumes to promotion on social media. So some people are still able to help us and volunteer in those different ways.
Um, So, yeah, I mean, like that's one of the areas where I'm having difficulty right now in a production is like, you know, lighting crew and set construction crew, you know, the groups of people that I've had in the past, you know, like many of them just left the industry, like because it was shut down, you know. Gathering large numbers of people in a single space wasn't possible for a number of years. Um, uh, I'm surprised to hear that you kind of picked up where you left off. We've had a lot of personnel changes, but um, that's kind of like the theme of today's show. I'm curious about how it's affecting everyone. It's interesting that in the community theater you know, setting, um, you're not seemingly you know, at least from what you're saying, you're not having those same challenges as in the professional theater world. um, I mean, it's impacting everybody from like New York to LA to Philadelphia. I've heard, you know, like even calls for union tests in New York for IATSE 1 are up because you know, they have tons of work and then tons of people have just left the industry entirely. Um, so I find it interesting that you guys are kind of just picking up where you left off. It's nice that you have dedicated folks like that. It's just surprising. Um, uh, let's talk a little bit about um, your actors for this show. Who do you have in the leads?
So we have two great leads. The guy playing our Aaron, his name's Chris Betzler, and Casey is played by the wonderful Christine Fiore. And they are both so talented. I can't wait for people to see this.
Awesome. Um, and how experienced are they? Have you worked with them before? Have I know this is your first time directing, but you know, we all run across each other in various ways. But
So I've worked with both of them before. They're both actually good friends. And they're really good friends with each other. So it kind of makes it a good time working with them. Sometimes it makes it a little awkward because they have to be intimate sometimes. So being friends and knowing each other's like partners, it makes it sometimes a little awkward, but we're getting through it. There's little laughs here and there, but we're getting over them.
awesome. Um, interesting that you brought that up. So there's been a drive amongst the greater theater community to involve like intimacy coordinators and stuff like that. How are you guys dealing with like these sort of issues where like for a community theater, I know it can be difficult to find space in the budget and rehearsal schedule to involve more technical elements sometimes. So it's something that is in the wider theater, but are you guys finding a way to incorporate that kind of thing?
So far we haven't really got anyone to come in to do that. I do know a couple people. One of my friends actually, she went back to school to get to become an intimacy coordinator. So she's taking classes right now to do that. And our music director, Chrissy Troy, she went to school and she does that as well. So we're hoping that she can come to some of the other rehearsals where like the kiss happens, and that we can kind of coordinate it and make everyone feel comfortable. Because we need to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe, and they do it the same way every single time. That way everyone's comfortable and nothing changes.
Right.
And we did have a conversation with them early on about it as well to make sure everybody was comfortable with it, even in the early stages before it even happened, just to make sure everyone was on the same page.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think those conversations have always happened in theater. I think I think it's one of the interesting things that that movement kind of started pre-COVID. And then, like COVID really just the COVID shutdown just really solidified a lot of these kind of individual rights, worker rights issues in the kind of workers' rights, side, like, um, it's like impossible to get crew to stay for 14 hours now, like they're not just not going to do it. It's not reasonable, to expect somebody to just stay overnight and work. It never has been, but in the theater industry, we've always, kind of been of the mentality, well, the show must go on. And I'm finding, at least personally, that we're in kind of this post-COVID world. We're not dedicated to the show must go on as much as we're doing the show needs to happen, but let's get it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. I find it interesting that folks that are in your network are doing intimacy coordinator work. I'm That's kind of encouraging to see that, and hopefully you guys get to incorporate it without too much difficulty. Um, the Let's transition a little bit onto the topics of the day. COVID SNAP benefits are ending. So there's a supplemental nutrition program called SNAP. Some folks call it food stamps or what have you. Um, and during the early stages of COVID, there was a greater increase in SNAP benefits to help offset the fact that a lot of people were suddenly losing their jobs, or there were supply chain issues. The food was suddenly more expensive, etc. Lots of people, I'm sure, even in your community, take advantage of this program. And it's a good program. One of the problems that we're facing right now is that these benefits were scheduled to expire. Um, and so now they are expiring. And we're not in a place where food is getting any cheaper, I suppose. Um, I don't know if either of you guys have any personal experience with this, but I'm just wondering, if from the perspective of folks who work with community, work with volunteers, um, I find it a lot easier to have folks work with when they're well fed. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Um, but yeah, I'm wondering how this will affect us in the arts because it seems like a lot of folks in the arts have a limited or fixed income, um, come from backgrounds or segments of society where benefits like this are really important. Um, any thoughts on SNAP at all? SNAP benefits ending? I don't know. Feel free to jump in at any time. Um, yeah, I just find it interesting. Let's see. Uh, yeah, so I mean, the person who wrote this article on Philly Voice about it was is actually talking about the same thing. And, the number of people who need help is increasing again, really. Um, you know, It'd be helpful if we had this, these benefits back or re-upped, I guess.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes. Being in the food industry, being in the food industry as my job, like I know that prices are not going down. Inflation is a big thing that's hitting us right now. I mean, eggs are like $4 a carton. Like, it's getting a little ridiculous out there. And with the ending, I think some kind of new program or something, because food's not going to get cheaper. So if they lessen what people can get, it'll only detriment our community.
yeah, yeah. I, the one of the statistics that's pulled out here is that Philabundance, it's a food organization here in Philadelphia. They pulled out the fact that their research showed that 30.9% of children in Philadelphia experienced insecurity in 2020. 2020, of course, being the first year of the pandemic, we knew those numbers were going to jump. But that's not that far off from what it is today, I would presume. And also, it's not that far off from what it is historically. It's a huge number. We live in a major city on the East Coast. 31% of children in the city. That means you pass 10 children, you're passing three who are hungry, experiencing insecurity. That seems like a ridiculously large number when I think about it. Like I go out to the market or whatever, and I walk down the block. I'm passing 10 children. 31% of children is a lot. I don't know how to say it in a way that it would be more impactful, but um, 15.8% of the city overall. That means, a little bit more than half of that number for basically everyone. So again, you pass 20 people, you're passing three that are currently going hungry due to a lack of availability of food, lack of funds for food, etc. So it's interesting why are we cutting this benefit? Why are we um, not continuing with this benefit or even increasing it? There's a weird sort of tie-in here. I did want to talk about AI, artificial intelligence, a little bit. I saw a photo this morning of the presidents done as cartoons, all the presidents of the United States done as cartoons. And I've seen a lot of AI art, and some of it is impressive for what it is. But there's always those little telltales. Usually, you can tell it's AI art with a glance. Um, I think this particular format lent itself well, because it's just portraits. It's head and shoulders portraits of people. Um, so like one of the telltales about AI art is counting the fingers, because AI art gets lost in details, and so greater features are easier to handle for AI. Um, but still, we're approaching an area where computers are being designed to handle things that um, are in the arts field. And there's always been a lack of understanding of the value of the arts, I would think, in the greater society. Like, we have a hard time uh, getting people paid to do artistic work. We have a hard time with, organizations being paid to do artistic work, and art is, I would think, one of the more necessary parts of society. And yet we're pushing off this work onto computers. Um, so the weird tie-in is, all these people that make their living off of art. Um, what are we gonna do? Like, suddenly, if art has, literally no productive value, how are we going to encourage and keep around the arts in general? I'm sure we're, multiple decades away from the first AI actor on a stage, but you know, I mean, it's not that far off. We have robots that can walk around, um, and we have computers that can write scripts. We have computers that can draw and paint. When you start combining all these things, you're talking about the elements of theater. So, how far off are we from, a community of AI art theater?
Hopefully, I mean, I feel like it would only be a matter of time before we see our first like all virtual animated musical. I mean, there definitely are musical animated movies. I know they're not the same thing as an actual musical, but those do kind of still exist, and we still do community theater. And I think at the end of the day, what it boils down to is just the passion for it. I think as long as we keep cultivating that passion in our volunteers and anybody who has these artistic talents in any shape or form that want to continue doing that, all we can hope for is that they pass it down to our next generation and that we continue doing what we love the most and sharing it with the community.
Yeah, I think my mother once said to me that, like, photography was a dying medium. I started my career as a photographer. Um, and that video was going to be what everybody moved to. And um, I don't agree with that in a broad sense. Yes, I agree with it. Like, we are using video to a greater extent now. Like, we use video chat, and like, I'm producing this talk show where we use and video has been distributed more widely than it ever was before. Much like when cameras started becoming more ubiquitous and people began to use still cameras at lower and lower entry points. So there's not this huge expense to getting video any longer. Well, it's still a pretty big expense for some people, but like, it's not is not out of the reach of most people any longer.
Mhm.
You can pick up a good video camera that can give you relatively good results. And you can the learning curve for the software that you use to edit with, etc., is low enough that like you don't have to invest so many hours that it's a lifetime goal. Um, so it's interesting to see as video is democratized how we use it and how it changes. But yeah, you're to your point, photography still exists. People still like photos. Um, People still like still images. Um, my I think my question and my tie-in is really more about you know, things like SNAP, things like, and then if you work backwards from that, like universal basic income, universal food programs, um, I think, they make greater space in our communities and society for the arts, and for, just uh, pursuits, like, you know, I enjoy sailing. How do I have the time to sail if my entire day is spent, making widgets? Well, if a computer is making the widgets, and I don't have to fight for every dollar that I need to spend on the food to feed me, um, then I have time to sail. I have time to, you know, pursue a passion. And I just find it. I wonder if and when that kind of shift will happen. Like like that shift from we are like a lot of like you guys both have day jobs like that you do to support your art, which you enjoy a lot more, right? I'm assuming. I don't want to get you fired or anything from your day job, but I don't think you would do theater. It's a lot of investment in time and energy. Even like a community theater. For those of my audience who don't know, the base difference between when you call something a community theater versus a professional theater or just theater is that everyone is volunteer, as you mentioned earlier. So all the actors, technicians, even the people that run things are volunteer, and the organization only has to bring in enough money to support the stuff that you actually physically need to buy. So lights or rental on your venue, thing I'm sure you have to pay for the fabric for your costumes or pay for your costumes, that kind of thing. And once you the major difference being I've always worked for professional theaters, and that just means we get paid. um, so but you guys have the day jobs that support the hours that you spend putting up this show. Um, where do we when how maybe do we divorce society, the greater society, from the thought that the terminology earn a living, like like people would call your day jobs earning a living, right? Like why do we have to earn a living? You could be living and do theater. Why do you have to do something in specific to deserve to eat and or pursue the things that you're good at? Um, and that's the time. Like what how do we get the message across to the greater society that it's not a vice to pursue things that are um, artistic or thought based, exploratory. Um, it's just what we as humans do, I guess. Like I mean, feel free, like, again, feel free to jump in whenever. I monologue, I could monologue for an hour by myself, but I love commentary. So, if I'm saying something that doesn't make sense or that does resonate, feel free to jump in. Um, I wonder how we get from where we are, where you have to have a day job, right? You have to, I did either of you pursue your day job as your passion? Is that what you've always wanted to do? Um,
No.
what did you want to be when you grew up? Like when you were in school, like what they ask you what you want to be when you grow up. What did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was in third grade, I wanted to be a mailman.
Lofty
But I mean,
goal.
it evolved into loving art and music. And I wanted to go to school for those kinds of education, but the outer forces in my life kind of dissuaded me into a practical, like pursuing a more practical major in college. So I studied education, but it wound up not being the right concentration for me. So I pivoted and switched to childcare because it does, give me a sufficient income to make a living, and I'm able to do my passions outside of it because the hours are flexible enough for me. So I kind of made it work, but it has been a struggle, and I think a lot of people go through that.
Um, what did Heather? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an astronaut, but I found I wasn't smart enough to be an astronaut. Um,
I mean, I don't know you that well, but I can't imagine a world in which somebody who's directing a theater piece could not be smart enough. It takes a lot of brain power to be at any of the title director levels, so
yeah, it's just I like math, but the basic math. So my uncle's actually a rocket scientist and he's so smart, and I just knew I wasn't gonna be at that level. So I went with finance.
well, I mean,
Yeah, something
there's
practical.
a lot of numbers in finance and a lot of creativity in both financing and engineering. I mean, I only dabble in finance with my own money, but there's it takes an element of creativity and creative solutions to solve problems in finance. Like excuse me, my cat's about to knock something off the table here. Um, sorry about that. Um, and I had no creative solution for getting over to my cat. But yeah, no, it takes creativity to solve problems in all of these areas, and a brain for math, a brain for science. Why, like I guess maybe that's a self-imposed restriction that you felt you weren't.
Probably.
Yeah. Um, I don't like it. It's like it. Why aren't you an astronaut? That's the question that I would like answered. Like, how did we come up with this system that pushes people in specific ways? I've always been um I've always been one to kind of follow my desires. I'm not I had those pressures that you were talking about, like from outside influences when I was growing. We all did. We've created this system. We've created a grade school system that goes into high school, that goes on to university, um, and throughout that system, you have a bunch of adults looking at you and trying to figure out, hey, what's this person good at? What are they gonna be most fulfilled and accomplished with? And hopefully, they have altruistic intent. I know you said you're in education, and I assume when you look at your students, you don't go, "Oh, we need 1,000 more widget makers by the end of 2040, so let me train these little kids to be widget makers." But even still, I remember, and I grew up I was born in the late 70s. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I remember when I was in grade school, how one of the things that was going around was we would need more aerospace engineers in the late 90s. Like that was a big drive in the 80s, like that aerospace engineering as a field was suffering a manpower problem. Um, so I was pushed towards aerospace engineering because I have an engineering mind. I solve things in physical space in my head. I build when I build things, I build them in my head first, and I can translate that quickly onto paper and into reality. Um, like my teachers correctly identified that that was one of my good skill sets. Um, but because that's one of my good skill sets, they were like, "Hey, you should be an aerospace engineer." Like studies show that we'll need more aerospace engineers. Well, as I approached the end of high school, like the demand for aerospace engineers completely died off because we were transitioning from um, paper drafting class. I took drafting class. I know how to draft on A4 paper with blueprint and make blueprints and all of that, and I can do it still to this day because I took 3 years of drafting class. And we were moving very rapidly from drafting class in my junior year to CAD, computer aided design, and doing everything on computers. And with CAD, you can accomplish the same thing that you would do in drafting in a tenth, a 16th of the time with so much less time put in by the engineer that we didn't need 25 engineers working on an airplane project. You needed 5, maybe 10. And you could cut all the other guys because all the other guys were solving little tiny parts of the problem, and then you were bringing them all together. And then suddenly, instead of solving little tiny parts of the problem, bringing them all together in the computer, we were just bringing it all together. Um, and I think that's the story here of AI, of the arts, of computers in general. I'm obviously not a Luddite. I'm on a computer. I'm talking to you guys on a computer. I use a digital watch. I use, a cell phone. I don't think that we're gonna stop the progress of computing computers, lowering the amount of time that people need to spend doing things. They're great for that. Um, I just wonder how we get to the space where people, uh, the fact that we don't need people to accomplish these tasks, um, translates into we still need the people. Like we still need to feed and clothe and take care of the people. Um, Segueing from, I like to talk about how things are related. So, like segueing from SNAP to health and well-being in general. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman was hospitalized recently. He's suffering clinical depression. Um, there was a time not even so long ago that we wouldn't say clinical depression in public in relationship to a person because it was, a mark that they were unable to take care of themselves. That like it was a personal fail. It was seen as a personal failing rather than as a disease model or as just something driven by outside forces. I don't know if you guys have any experience with dealing with people with depression. I would assume you do, just because depression exists in society. It's very prevalent. I'm sure it's like way more than the statistical numbers even acknowledge. Um, People suffer depression occasionally, and there are disease models of it. Senator Fetterman is likely suffering clinical depression because he had a stroke that has ongoing impacts on your life, which then add to your, they change your mental health picture. He suddenly cannot hear and process what he's hearing. And I know from being somebody who can't process what I'm hearing, I have on my side, I have closed captioning turn on. I don't know if you noticed on your side of the Zoom, but I have closed captioning turn on because sometimes I'll hear something you say, and then I'll have to like actually read it before I can process it. Or I'll have to go back to it, and because like you said something and I was thinking about something else, and not in a like daydreaming sort of way, but like when I was in school we called it daydreaming because we didn't understand that people auditorially process things differently. But Fetterman has gone through his whole life processing things one way. He had a stroke, it processes different in his brain now. Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit depressed. That might lead to um where I'm upset constantly because I can't figure out how to fix this. Um, I don't know if you guys have any examples of things that like have affected you like that, but yeah, I wonder and as a part of returning to normal, do we return to normal? Um, I find that a lot of people are starting to acknowledge that these conditions exist, and that people need to take care of them, and that people need to be more mindful of their own mental and physical health, than we have in the past, than we've allowed them to in the past.
Mm.
Um,
I think COVID has made it more prevalent because everyone in isolation I think it kind of amplified it to us as a whole. And I know that personally, more and more of my friends and family have come out to us, expressing issues with depression and anxiety. And also just to tie just a little bit back to theater, having a core group of people that you can depend on for that type of thing is so important. And I think that every time you have a new show and a cast comes together, everybody gets very close and we talk a lot, especially when it gets more intense, closer to our like production dates. And a lot of the times that can be very beneficial to a lot of people's mental health because it's just an outlet that they can express themselves and also a lot of closer friends and newer friends that they can depend on and rely on.
Yeah. And people also tying it to theater as well. It's called closing blues. So it's a lot of times after the closing of a show, people are sad because you've been with these people for like 3, 4 months, seeing them like almost every day, and then all of a sudden it kind of stops. And so people have sometimes closing blues because they're not seeing these people that they've seen every day for 3 months anymore. And so it can be a problem in theater. And so we just, like Maddie said, we have these friendships and we just need to continue them after and check in on people even after closing.
yeah. I also I think you know the fact that we present theater contributes to people's mental health in a positive way, the greater community's mental health in a positive way. I think it's important, you know, we've shown the importance of representation, people seeing themselves in media, in productions, etc. Um, and I think it's interesting that that's one of the things that theater provides is it provides an opportunity for people to have that outlet, like you were saying, and see them see things about themselves in a production. Perhaps I guess would be the terminology. Um, that they can relate to, and it becomes that outlet for them.
Yeah, and that's kind of a little bit of the thing we were looking at, especially with first date. I think, especially after the pandemic, a lot of people's dating lives have been entirely online. It's become extremely difficult to meet people in person because social activities have become so limited. So people are constantly using online dating apps and services like that. So I think that this musical at this point in time has kind of made a little bit of a comeback because it's been about a decade since it was released, but I think that it just still rings true for all of the weird stresses and anxieties of meeting someone in person for the first time because it's just less likely for that to happen these days.
Hmm. Um, Interesting. And I one going back to what I was talking about with the difficulties of like the industry is facing in people just finding people to work on shows in general. Um, I find interesting the increased awareness of your own personal health and well-being and how that affects people on the job site. I know, like, personally, I've been masking on set because I have had a cold basically since the beginning of December. I have a child in daycare, and therefore I get colds pretty regularly right now. Um, I wonder, like, how has, COVID impacted you guys each individually, with that kind of thought process? Do you find you think about the health and well-being of others around you more? Or do you find that you make more concessions for their health and well-being, or do you find that difficult, or do you find that comforting in a way?
Well, with our cast right now, it is so small that we're fortunate to have kind of like less people to worry about, especially with things like exposure. We have had some cast illnesses, and everyone is so accommodating. They will miss a rehearsal or two, come back and mask up until they're feeling better, and it really helps prevent the spread. We also have a COVID policy where all of our cast and crew has to be vaccinated and boosted to prevent the spread even further. So we really do try to take as many cautionary methods as we can to make sure everybody's safe and that we can have a good show.
Yeah. I know I personally had COVID actually last week. And so that it's still out there and a lot of people like think it's gone and it's not. Um, so I'm masking. It's been 7 days, but I'm still masking when I'm at rehearsals now, and I probably will be for the next couple weeks because I don't want to be that one person that spreads it to everyone. And I have a 4-year old who's at daycare as well. And so he brings back so many colds. So we're pretty much masking a lot because I don't want to spread even a cold now. Like
I
before,
had I had
yeah.
influenza A at the end of December, I want to say, and it was just like it set me back. Like I have not yet had COVID, which is not a brag. It's just what actually happened. I don't know how I've managed to avoid it. But yeah, I haven't had COVID, but I've had literally everything else. And influenza A was awful enough that I don't want to give it to anybody. Yeah.
And I think our cast, I mean, just people who do community theater in general, they obviously nobody wants to see their show not be able to go up on opening night, opening weekend, or at all. They don't want to miss a single performance where they would show what they've worked so hard on to everybody. And so I think with that underlying concern, everyone is even safer than they could be because nobody wants to see that happen.
Um, Transitioning a little bit onto local Philadelphia news, the mayoral race is up and running. We have about a dozen candidates for mayor looking to win the executive office here in Philadelphia. Um, there's a relatively popular gentleman because of COVID, because of um, yeah, really just because of COVID. Terrell Hagler, he goes by the online name of Ya Favorite Trash Man. And he became popular because during the COVID shutdown, there was the period where we kind of as a society acknowledged, everything breaks down when some folks can't work, and oftentimes those are the folks that are paid the least, um, and have the least protections in their job. Um, I Terrell is running for city council for one of the open seats, but he's running a set of public one-on-one candidate interviews, uh, talking about trash and climate change. His platform really has been all about quality of life issues, and that's one of the things that you can really get folks in Philadelphia uh, right behind, no matter what their political leanings are. Um, but yeah, coming back from COVID, do we want to continue to have these positions that we rely on, these folks that we rely on, and then they're not paid well enough to miss a day of work, or they aren't paid commensurate with the impact that they have on our lives. Um, I find that an interesting question, and also, like something that maybe we shouldn't return to normal on. The normal is, we're paying people who um, have, these hard labor jobs, or jobs that we rely on as a society to keep society functioning, that we pay minimum wage, or that we find ways to not pay very well, even if we are paying minimum wage. Um, I know that in my business, we've been paying more per hour for technicians and theater workers than we used to. You guys are on an all volunteer um, program, but I would assume that that even affects you, in that you probably are looking at people's breaks more stringently, trying to make sure that people are well taken care of, that you rely on, etc. Um, I like, I just, it's one of the areas where I wonder, should there be a return to normal? Um, I don't think so, but feel free to. Is there any areas that either of you guys think about and think, that's something that I really miss from pre-COVID time?
I mean, I guess COVID kind of put a halt on some things, and I think it was a good pause for people to reconsider stuff, but I don't think there's anything in particular that I'm missing about the before times. And all I can hope for is that in the future, any of our future politicians have those things to reconsider, and they just keep thinking about them in the back of their minds. All we can hope for is positive change. There is really no solution, but the small folks kind of have to rally together to make a big change.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. Heather, any last thoughts? Maddie, any last thoughts?
Come out and see First Date in March.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully folks have got the info. We've posted it on our chats and in our subtitles. So people should be able to come out and see your show. I'm gonna go up to a one up of me and outro the show. Feel free to stick around in the chat for a minute if you'd like. If not, you can feel free to head out anytime you need to. But thank you for being our guest this week, and I really enjoyed talking to you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks. And thank you to our audience. I really appreciate that you tune in every week and check out what we have to say, what we're up to. Check out the conversation. Next week we have a really awesomely special show for you. Wednesday, the 1st of March, we'll have mayoral candidate Derek Green on. And we're hoping to start our one-on-one interview schedule with all the mayoral candidates. I know my associate producer is working feverishly in the background to maybe shush me on that, but I would really like to have all the mayoral candidates on and talk to them. Um, you know, I don't know if any of y'all have noticed. I talk a lot about race issues, social issues, and interpersonal social issues, how we relate to society, specifically how people of color relate to society, and I think these are important things. Um, I think it's important for any candidate who wants to run for the mayor of a city that is 40% black to answer how they think solving a crime problem in the city will work, how they think that their plan will impact the community that we live in. Um, at any rate, tune in next week. I'll hopefully get to ask some of these questions of Derek Green, and we'll hopefully get to ask these questions of a lot of candidates for mayor for the city of Philadelphia. And we'll be back then. If you like what you see, please subscribe on YouTube and or Facebook and or Twitter and or Twitch. Um, we have all of those venues for our broadcast. And all of them, when you hit subscribe, will notify you that we're going live. They'll also notify you that there's a new video to watch whenever we release new videos. And if you also would like to help produce this show, consider donating on our Patreon, patreon.com/Late Thief Productions. We have donations for as little as $1 a month. But yeah, tune in again next week. We hope to bring you a great show then, and enjoy the rest of your week, everybody.